Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I am David Chen, and with me are
Devendra Hardawar.
Jeff Kanata.
And joining us today, she is a staff writer at Nerdist.com. Lindsay Romaine, welcome back to the Slash Filmcast. Lindsay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you on here. And what we're going to be doing today, we got some emails to discuss that you sent into slashfilmcast@gmail.com. We also have some what we've been watching. Looking forward to hearing what everyone's been checking out this week. And then we're going to conclude with an in-depth review of Men in Black International. Men in Black International is the film we'll be discussing today. So that's what we've got in store for you. You can find more episodes of the show at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. And a bunch of good emails came in to us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Let's read an email that is like light on the spoilers. This email comes in from MJ, who writes into slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Love you guys so much. Look forward to every week to your takes on films that I want to see, have no intention of seeing, and learning about smaller or hidden films that are not on my radar. So when Devendra recommended Hotel Mumbai because it featured an ass-kicking Dev Patel going all Jason Bourne, and
Not
naturally,
Hotel Mumbai. Not Hotel Mumbai.
What is it called?
I did not. Yeah, I haven't even seen that movie. I recommended The Wedding Guest.
So this guy,
I think Hotel Mumbai is another movie with Dev Patel. I just haven't seen it. Yeah. Yeah, Dev Patel is in that. But yeah, I recommended The Wedding Guest, which is awesome.
but does Dev Patel? Does Dev Patel?
So, never mind.
Never mind.
well,
Yeah, slightly racist confusion there. It's okay. It's okay.
So I gotta read the rest of this email. I gotta read the rest of the
going.
email so we can try to like.
Please get your movies right, people.
So we can like
recommend
reverse
them for a
engineer
reason.
what went wrong here.
Yes.
So MJ says, I naturally thought this might be a nice sit with my wife and I. Now, for some context, my wife can handle some kinds of movie violence, but some she cannot stomach. For example, she loves the Jason Bourne films, but she abhors violence on screen where innocent people are repeatedly gunned down in graphic detail. So let's play a little game of How I Night when I put on this movie. Was it violent? Oh my God, yes. Like John Wick Chapter 3 level violent. Does it feature innocent people being gunned down for 2 hours in graphic detail as they plead for their life? Why, yes, it does. But I kept telling my wife to hang in there because Dev Patel was going to kick into Jason Bourne mode any second and kick all the bad guys' asses. Suffice to say, this never happened. Surely Mr. Patel must have taken out a few terrorists, right? I mean, why would Devendra have said this if it wasn't true? In fact, Dev Patel kicks absolutely no asses in this. He runs, he hides, he helps to save people by being quiet.
It's almost like I watched the wrong movie.
I just have one question for Devendra. What kind of fucked up Jason Bourne movies have you been watching?
Listeners, please pay attention to listening comprehension. It is great. It is important because, I've heard good things about this movie, actually, but I also hear it's very intense. It sounds like the United 93 of terrorist events movies, so, yeah.
This is amazing. I just Googled Wedding Guest, Dev Patel, and the image, the first Google image result is of him holding a gun, which implies that...
him holding a gun with the Clint Eastwood face. Like, at what point... And this reader still has not even finished the movie and did not think maybe this may be the wrong movie. So I don't want to rag on you too much. Please see The Wedding Guest. It is violent, but not the same level. Like, you won't see innocents getting tortured, at least.
That is incredible. I thought this email was going to be schooling you on today's episode of the podcast, but it turns out MJ Sieber is the one who has been schooled. He thought Devendra, he thought Devendra was talking about Hotel Mumbai, which for some reason I don't think you even mentioned that movie, did you? On that episode?
I've not. I've never uttered the words. I didn't even say Hotel Mumbai during my discussion of The Wedding Guest.
So it looks like MJ, the shoe is on the other foot.
So good.
Amazing.
Please see The Wedding Guest and report back what your wife thinks.
I love how mad he got at watching the wrong movie. It's so great.
This is life on the internet, basically. You're wrong.
Also, MJ Sieber signed the email, sincerely never allowed to pick movies to watch with my wife again. So, good job burning through that credit for no reason.
I want her to hear this part of the show so badly. I hope she hears it.
Please have your wife write the reply email.
Yeah. Incredible.
Amazing.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about Black Mirror for a second, which is the thing we discussed last week instead of Dark Phoenix. and we reviewed all 3 episodes of Black Mirror. And we're gonna talk like in brief about the premises and some basic plot points about those episodes. So if you don't want to hear anything about those episodes, you got to tune out for like the next couple minutes. But we did get some emails in response that I thought were really interesting. Lindsay, you have not seen Black Mirror yet. Do you have any interest in seeing it at this point?
Honestly, it's kind of at the low end of my list of things to catch up on, but I plan to watch it eventually, but I don't mind
There's some good
spoilers.
stuff in there. It's worth watching at the very
I
Yeah.
would say episode 2 is worth watching. The other 2, I don't know.
All right.
So let's start with the easiest one and go backwards. Speaking of people getting schooled via our email address at /filmcast@gmail.com, so the 3rd episode of Black Mirror last week was called Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2.
Mhm.
And Jeff, you I think you kind of went on a bit of a rant last week about how you thought that episode was dumb.
Me?
And how it was extremely silly that that there was this whole subplot about one of the characters being a rat catcher, and like how the villain was comically evil and all that. We got this email from a few people, but this one comes in from Timothy from Los Angeles, who writes in your guys' review of Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2, it was mentioned that the first 30 minutes were great, the second half jumped the shark. Initially, I had the same reaction, but I soon realized, as it was pointed out to me, that the episode was intentionally silly. Let me explain, because this part may have gone well over your heads, having not grown up with Hannah Montana, as I unfortunately did. As a millennial growing up in the early 2000s, Disney Channel had a big influence on my generation. Obviously, it's where Miley Cyrus got her start. Throughout the episode, Charlie Brooker establishes several tropes often depicted in Disney Channel TV movies. The 2 cliché dumb male bodyguards, the robot or doll that comes alive, the talent show, the goofy vehicle, the strained sister relationship, the oblivious father, the cartoony plot devices, the tragic family backstory, the everybody's happy ending, etc. Now, you guys might have picked up on these points and thought they were so obvious that they weren't worth mentioning, but there's even the mouse exterminator plotline. No, it isn't a rat exterminator, as referenced throughout the podcast, which makes the intentionality that it is a mice exterminator seem all the more clear. The entire episode is a commentary on Miley's career, having gotten her start largely because of the mouse machine, eventually, apart from that overdone cliche Disney Channel formula, to become a more authentic artist, losing fans along the way, as shown in those final scenes. With that logic, I think a decent criticism is in saying the episode's first and second act should have been flipped, should have begun with the Disney cliches and deconstruct them along the way. Instead, the episode starts with the Black Mirror cliches and adapts the Disney formula in the second half. A bit weird, either way, but I found that interesting.
That's really cool, actually, though.
Yeah.
See, it was intentionally bad.
But the thing is, like, we did point out it was silly, and I think it's silly in a fun way. I just didn't realize it was Hannah Montana power.
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, like, if it really, I have not seen a single episode of Hannah Montana, but if it really did imitate Hannah Montana tropes, as is discussed in several emails to us, then I do
Yeah.
think that is a little clever. I do think that's a little clever.
I agree. I just wish it added up to something. You know, I feel like maybe if I was a Hannah Montana aficionado, it would have added up to something. I doubt it. I don't think that just aping that style says anything.
Yeah.
But
Lindsay, by the way, are you a Nine Inch Nails fan?
I'm a Nine Inch Nails fan. I also did
you
want to
should
add.
watch that episode first.
Okay,
Just
I
saying.
did.
Just saying.
This got me really intrigued because I have not watched the new season of Black Mirror, but I have seen every episode of Hannah Montana.
Oh,
you must report back.
Yeah.
You must report back.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
I will.
episode specifically.
You are our Hannah Montana whisperer.
Yes.
yeah. Definitely. Okay. We got one other email about the first episode, Striking Vipers, which, for those who don't know, is about these 2 dudes, one of whom is married, and they find sexual satisfaction by having sex with each other in a VR version of a fighting game. Yeah, I think I said that all correctly. So
that all makes sense.
this
yes.
email comes in from Andy from Scarborough in the United Kingdom, who wrote in to defend the episode. He says, quote, instead of having a specific viewpoint on sexuality, I think the direction the episode goes is much bolder and more interesting. Not to mention less predictable than the treatment of the subject matter would have been. Far from shying away from its themes, I believe the ambiguity of the relationship the two central men share from the very beginning of the episode is both intentional and integral to what I see as the episode's thesis, that in the future it is not only the definition of sexuality we may be questioning, but the very nature of human relationships. The question the episode poses is, are we changing social mores of our world, coupled with the way technology has forever altered how we communicate with each other, making rigidly categorized, traditionally defined relationships obsolete? So yeah, and
that's what I wanted it to be about. That's what I was hoping it would be about.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea being floated around. I don't
think it succeeds.
Yeah, you could argue that. Yeah,
because the idea being that like technology can fundamentally reconfigure our expectations for marital relationships. I mean, I think that's like that is the revolutionary idea behind the episode. That I don't know that it fully lands, but I think per what Andy says in his email, it introduces that idea, certainly. Like there's enough there that you understand, like, oh yeah, there are world-altering implications for this technology. But
I did mention in the review, like, I think that was one of the strongest parts of the episode, the fact that it at least does this without any judgment in a way. Like it is just kind of matter of fact, and I can appreciate that. It didn't poke fun at this idea. It treated it in a really intentional way. Yeah.
Well, Andy says here, quote, maybe we're wrong to expect to find a partner who satisfies every impossibly disparate romantic and platonic criterion we ask of them. So we compromise. We find the closest match we can to our ideal partner, but technologically, we're already at a point where that compromise no longer needs to be made. Could then a future exist where, first and foremost, we partner with a human being we feel the deepest connection with, regardless of gender or sexuality, leaving sexual needs to be satisfied by the virtual world, where we can design a partner that aligns completely with our every specific desire? Or perhaps the episode is an indictment of long-term relationships in general. The reason why relationships are complicated and so often don't work is simply that they're a social construction we are biologically not equipped to implement well. A line of thought which could put Striking Vipers thematically much more in line with something like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Anyway, I think any single episode of TV that deals with the concept as weighty as the social feature of the human race deserves a little more than just the fighting wasn't as good as Scott Pilgrim's fighting, as true as that statement undoubtedly is. End quote.
There was a lot of praise in our review of that episode. Come on.
I think that is a very smartly written email, and I would love the episode to have landed those ideas in a better way. I would love a science fiction story to make me think of that. I think this episode got in its own way, if that's what it was intending, because it didn't get there. It just everything was rushed, and it was too goofy to make me go there intellectually. I feel like the potential was there, but it gets in its own way with the sort of goofy concepts. And you know, I don't know. I would love that. I would love those themes to be explored. I think that's really a fascinating side of where we might be heading with technology, but I don't think this episode achieved it.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts in reaction to your thoughts, in reaction to our thoughts on Black Mirror Season 5, which we discussed last week on the Slash Filmcast. Thanks for writing into slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Some great emails this week. Let's get on with the show and talk about what we've been watching. Lindsay Romaine, you've been watching something interesting, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've seen The Dead Don't Die, the new Jim Jarmusch movie. I've seen it twice now, which is rare for me these days to see anything more than once. But I really love this movie, and it's been kind of an interesting conversation because most people I've talked to that have seen it did not like it so much. It's very dry and strange. It's basically his take on the zombie genre, about a zombie invasion in a small town called Centerville. And it's just, if you've seen a Jarmusch movie, you kind of know what to expect, which is just very kind of like slow, funny, dry, very meta. It's got Adam Driver and Bill Murray as these small town cops who just kind of like have to deal with this invasion in very, very like simplistic ways. It's very, very weird. And if you don't vibe with it, you're probably not going to have any kind of reaction to it. Like the audience I saw it with, I think was kind of like a little bit stunned by how much it doesn't like really go anyplace. But I really loved it. I loved it enough to see it twice. And the second time I caught a lot of little things that made me think it was even more genius than I thought the first time.
What was like some of your favorite aspects of The Dead Don't Die?
Yeah, well, I really liked. It's funny because it does creep on you. It's very very slow, but it is sort of. I feel like it's having all of these sort of commentaries on how when there's incoming problems, these sort of things hanging over us on the global aspect, global warming. The movie talks about fracking a lot, all of these things that are big subject matters that we just kind of like ignore or don't pay attention to. It uses the zombie genre to kind of explore how humans just don't care about something until it's literally like eating their face off. So I thought it was a really smart commentary on that kind of thing. It's also just like loaded with cameos that delighted me. There's a really great like Carol Kane, Iggy Pop is in it. Tom
Let's
Waits.
not spoil too many.
Oh, that's in the.
here.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
It's in the trailers and everything.
These guys
But
don't watch trailers, so spoilers get really really tricky around here.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I wouldn't even really call them cameos, but they're parts. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun stuff. If you're a Jarmusch fan, I think you'll really enjoy it. I don't know how it ranks for me, but I've seen it twice now. It's definitely up there as one of my favorite movies of the year.
Oh, can't wait for this. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's The Dead Don't Die. It's playing in limited release right now, so check it out. Lindsay's seen it twice, which is rare. How many movies have you seen twice this year?
I think this is the first one, actually. Oh no, I've seen Endgame twice also.
Oh,
so
yeah. I saw
yeah.
Endgame twice. I've seen John Wick 3 twice. Devindra, you seen any movies twice this year?
This year? No.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I guess. I wasn't even going to ask Jeff, so.
The dads haven't seen any movies twice, everybody.
Yeah, it's a privilege for me to see a movie once.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I live.
Fair enough. All right, well, that's The Dead Don't Die. That's what Lindsay's been watching.
Ask me
this
how
week.
much sleep I've had, Dave.
So I had a chance to watch Cold Pursuit finally this week. This is the latest
Yes.
Liam Neeson revenge story, and this movie is really weird. I don't know why it's so hard to make a Liam Neeson revenge action film that is thrilling and has great action scenes and shows Liam Neeson being a badass. I didn't really quote unquote get this movie. Like it's kind of like a dark comedy, but I didn't really feel like that landed particularly well with me.
Yeah.
And I think this movie has like it's introducing subplots throughout the movie at an alarming rate. Like an hour into the movie, there's like characters coming up that I'm like, wow, like how in God's name are you going to resolve this subplot before the end of the movie? And they more or less do try and tie most of them up, but like not in a particularly satisfying way. I thought this is pretty disappointing. I don't know why it's so hard to just do another Taken. The only one that's come close, in my opinion, is like Unknown, which is kind of interesting. But like I've seen every single one of these Liam Neeson action movies, and I find most of them to be pretty disappointing. Like I've seen,
Yeah, but this one is not trying to be another Taken. You know, like that's the thing. I guess it depends on what you're going and looking for, right?
yeah, I mean, it starts kind of as another Taken.
Yes, yes. And then it sort of becomes like a commentary on these Liam Neeson revenge movies in a weird way. So it is darkly comedic. The sense of humor is so specific and weird
Yeah.
and very like who's the director? I think he's is he a Swedish? He's a Norwegian director, and it feels like that very specific type of like Northern European humor, basically. I don't know what you'd call it. I will say it's worth a watch because it reminds me of like the Martin McDonagh stuff, like just the really sad but darkly funny dramas. I hate the villain in this movie. Who's the actor who plays the villain? Because he seems.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
man.
not sure. First of all, we should mention that the director is Hans Petter Molen. He also directed the original version of this film.
Yes.
That Cold Pursuit is based on. Everyone I've tweeted about this with, talked about this with, says like that movie is better than Cold Pursuit.
Aw.
And that movie is called In Order of Disappearance, which you can actually find on Netflix right now, I believe. So I was actually like thinking maybe I should go back and like check out In Order of Disappearance on Netflix because it looks like it could be a better. It's Stellan Skarsgård plays the main actor in that movie.
I think like compared to the rest of like the recent Neeson, filmography, like of everything trying to be taken again, though, I think it does kind of rise above the crap. Like it's more interesting than some of those.
Yeah, I'll grant you it's more interesting. The villain character is played by Tom Bateman, by the way.
Oh
Who
God,
plays Viking.
who basically seems like they're making fun of every like super evil bad guy who also is trying to be like a good dad or something. Like he has a family, he has emotions, but oh man, that role could have been
That's the
handled
thing.
so
If it was
Yeah.
a meta commentary on these kind of movies, I think if it was more explicitly that, then I think I would have enjoyed it
Yeah.
more. But
Yeah.
the tone didn't work for me. I will
There are
also
many
just
things that hold this movie back. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
and I'll just say one other thing, which is that this movie has the worst CG in establishing shots that one of the worst CG establishing shots that I've ever seen. Like
I will say this. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, just like there's like several establishing shots of like here's like the city of Denver or here's like this mountain or whatever, and it looks like something that like I could have made using like motion on my iMac at home. You know, like it looks awful. So it's almost like at times like that I'm like, is this supposed to be bad? You know, sometimes I didn't know. I just found the tone of Cold Pursuit did not work for me. So
I will say the setting is really interesting because Liam Neeson plays a guy. He's just the guy who plows the snow. He's Mr. Plow, right? And he lives in this like shack on top of the mountain.
Davinja,
And-
that name again?
is
Yeah.
Mr. Plow.
Is Mr. Plow.
Okay.
But he lives, on the shack with Laura Dern, and he clears the roads, and that's his life. And I think the sense of place of this movie is really fascinating too, because it's like, first of all, who the hell wants to live there? This guy is basically Superman for this community who goes on a rampage. So I like those little elements because that's not something we've never seen a snowplowman go on a revenge spree yet. So that was interesting at least.
I mean, I wish this was the movie you just described. You know, I wish it was like, oh yeah, this guy who's like a hero of the city like becomes revenge murderous, and like, what does that do to the society? You know, like the movie doesn't care about any of that stuff, in my opinion. So I found it to be quite disappointing. All I want is to see Liam Neeson kill some dudes, and I don't know why that's so difficult to get. But whatever. Also, Jeff, you brought up the Mr. Plow reference. Here's the thing that I've been encountering, and I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Is that like I came to this realization recently that like if I ever have a child, I will need them to watch Simpsons seasons 1 through 8, Seinfeld, and Arrested Development, or else they will not understand most of my references.
Yeah, you just won't know how to communicate.
Yeah,
There'll be this like physical barrier between you.
yeah, that's right.
No,
Yeah, I mean,
that's what being a parent is. There's a physical barrier between your generations.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to that. They're not.
Welcome
your
to
kid-
that.
Yeah, you're gonna make lots of references that your kid doesn't care about, and that kid is gonna go, "That's a dad joke."
That's a dad joke.
Dads reference this old show called The Simpsons.
Or just wait for it to go retro and then becomes cool again because there are all these stories about like the generation Y or Z kids. I don't know what we're on now, but the kids who are growing up post 9/11 who are growing up with The Office, and that is their cultural touchstone. And kids are obsessed with The Office because it was on Netflix as they were growing up, and I guess either their parents watched it a ton or they did or something, which is sort of like how maybe we grew up with the Wonder Years or something in the 90s or 80s like that. It is sort of that, I guess, and that's kind of funny.
also, Jeff, The Simpsons being an old show, I mean, that show is literally still on the air as far as I know.
Yeah, but we all know
you're
that
talking about the old stuff. Yeah.
your references are all through the first 8 seasons, like mine are.
Yeah,
You know?
fair enough.
It's the Conan O'Brien years that we all reference.
Yeah. Lindsay Romaine, do you have any kind of like cultural touchstones that like if someone wants to get you, they need to have watched all these things?
Well, it's funny as you were saying The Office, because I used to watch The Office like live. I don't have that Netflix thing, but I do have a lot of like jokey things that I say that are directly from that. I think for me, the thing I reference absolutely the most is Parks and Recreation. Like I probably throughout the day make at least 4 or 5 Parks and Rec jokes. So I guess that's my Office.
Yeah. Well, I think what's clear from this conversation is all 4 of us on the podcast have excellent taste.
Yes.
You know, between Parks and Recreation, The Office, The Simpsons, Seinfeld, and Arrested Development. I mean, you know.
I thought you were going to say what's clear is that Lindsay is markedly younger than we are. She's like, yeah, I'm down with Miley Cyrus. I know that my show references are in the last 5 years. Yeah.
I should be very clear with the Hannah Montana thing that I was definitely way too old to be watching that. I think I was in college, so
Fair enough.
yeah. Yeah.
That's what I've been watching. That's Cold Pursuit. Devindra, what have you been watching?
Yeah, a couple of things. But actually, speaking of being out of touch with the kids, I just remember this. I just saw the first episode of Euphoria on HBO, and holy hell, I feel so old. David Ehrlich, basically, he tweeted the thing of Matt Damon turning into old Matt Damon from Saving Private Ryan. Like, that's how I feel watching the show, because it is a show about teens, and the teens are not all right. They're not good. It's about the suburbs, and things are bad in the suburbs, and it stars Zendaya as a girl who's going through a lot. She's coming out of rehab. She has drug issues, she has parental issues, she has behavioral issues. Like, it's all sorts of things. But it's a show about basically kids struggling to just maintain some sense of normalcy in the suburbs today. And holy hell, does it make me feel old, because I like to watch high school shows and movies just for fun. It kind of gives me a fleeting sense of being back in high school and seeing a life that I never really had. So I really like Riverdale. You know, that's a fun show. That's a fun romp. This show is like Riverdale on acid. It's a romp. There's a lot of sex. There's a lot of nudity. I feel kind of weird seeing this sometimes on a show about high school kids. There are a lot of penises, which is probably good for the people who complain about not getting enough penises in Game of Thrones. I hear the show is going to have quite a bit of that. But it's a lot of weird stuff. I think based on the first episode, it's going really hard into being like very stylish and cinematic in ways. It reminds me, I was talking with people about this on Twitter. It's kind of Gaspar Noé in terms of style. But in terms of like what they're going, it's almost like Harmony Korine's Kids. It is about like the harsh life some kids are leading, basically. At the same time, it feels almost like a neo-noir. It has kind of like brick elements too. So I'm very interested. It just makes me a little uncomfortable to see some of these people in like sexy situations. It's very weird. Like Maude Apatow, Judd Apatow's daughter, is in this show. It is rough. It is very rough seeing somebody who we saw, growing up as a child in some movies in not so great situations. So it's a big experience, but I think it's worth watching if you're up for it.
All right. That's Euphoria. I saw the trailers. HBO's been advertising the hell out of this.
It's so stylish.
Yeah, it looks great, and I also have no interest in watching it whatsoever, because it's not even like I have kids and I'm like, this could equip me for what the kids are going through. It's like, this is just a way to stress myself out for no, like, I'm just like,
it'll stress you out. It'll stress every parent the hell out. I'm like, oh God, I don't know how this is going to go in a couple of years.
We should say there's a couple comments in the chat room. Martin is correcting your pronunciation of, I think, Jarmusch. Is it Jarmusch?
It's
Jarmusch.
Jarmusch. So apologies for that. Also, Walter Chaw, who wrote a scathing review of Men in Black International. So I think he might be here for a review of that. He says Hans Petter Molen done some really incredible stuff with Stellan Skarsgård. Zero Kelvin and Aberdeen are classics, the latter particularly for Lena Headey fans. I have not seen any of Hans Petter Molen's other stuff, but I am going to try to check out An Order of Disappearance, and also Zero Kelvin and Aberdeen sound like they are great as well.
Sounds good.
Always a fan of checking out Lena Headey's other work beyond Game of Thrones. So, okay, Devindra Hardawar, what else have you been watching?
Yeah, a couple more things. I saw Don't Look Now for the first time, the Nicholas Roeg film. That is, I feel like a lot of people have heard about it. It's something I've been meaning to see for a while. And I'm trying to since I have the Criterion channel, I'm trying to do at least one like older film per week or something.
Trying
just
to eat your vegetables every week.
Yeah,
Excellent.
It's good. I mean, it's fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it too. It's just hard. As I talked about before a couple episodes ago, I love the curation of Criterion Channel. So they kind of just led me to this. I was like, oh, this is a good Father's Day movie. This is a movie about a daughter being killed accidentally and a husband and wife trying to deal with the aftermath of that. It is incredibly stylish. I found it incredibly compelling too, because I guess it counts as a horror movie. And I think up until like the very final minutes, it doesn't really seem like one. Like, it's a movie about grief. It's a movie about them coming to terms with their daughter drowning in a pond near their home. So they go to Venice for work, because it's sort of like imprisoning yourself in the thing that killed your child. There's a lot going on with this movie, like visually and symbolically. I think the editing is kind of fantastic. There is an extended sex scene between Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie in this, where I believe people thought it was real at one point, like unsimulated, or yeah, not simulated, and just like them going at it. But it's cut in such a way that I don't know, I found really interesting for its time. It reminds me of the was it the Out of Sight sex scene where there's a lot of cutting in between the action of people just staring at each other. In this movie, it's them like trying to, it's a really involved sex scene. It goes on for a while, but it's also them trying to like maintain this connection when they're slowly drifting apart. All just very fascinating. Definitely worth a watch. This is the sort of thing I love just having on demand with the Criterion Channel. So there's my little ad for that service.
All right, that's Don't Look Now. I actually have the Criterion Blu-ray. I just recently bought it. I can't wait to check it out.
Yep.
And what else have you been watching, Devendra?
Just briefly, also on the Criterion Channel, I saw Kylie Blues several weeks ago, and this is an independent film by Gon B, and it's sort of like, I guess it's sort of also a neo-noir type thing, set in village in China. It's about a guy who is a doctor, and he's a doctor who was in prison for a while, kind of struggling guy, but he's off to find his nephew that he thinks his brother may have like sold off to somebody. So he's on a search for his nephew throughout the countryside. It's a weird movie. This is one of those movies where it kind of reminds me of Jim Jarmusch stuff, where it just takes its time. Some scenes kind of go on forever. But I found the style of it really interesting. Like it doesn't feel like a noir type film, except it really is, because it's somebody like searching for truth in a world that doesn't quite make sense. And this film is also famous for, I believe, it has a long take that lasts 40 minutes. And it's insane. It's insane to see them do this on a really low budget thing. It's kind of rough. You can tell that they didn't have the best equipment in the world. Like they literally just like threw a camera on a motorcycle and followed, actors throughout a scene. The camera like moves with them inside and outside, so like there's lighting adjustments that don't quite happen on time. There are times where you could tell the cameraman is struggling to walk through like a gravelly road or something, but I think that all kind of adds something to it. It's a really interesting film. Throughout that whole sequence, the film almost becomes like a weird sort of time machine where the characters interacting with like their past selves. It's kind of hard to describe. I will say, if you're into like the weird, slow, elliptical cinema of like Jarmusch and who's the guy who did Uncle Boonmee, I think. It's those types of things. It's slower cinema. It's a slow burn, but I thought it was definitely worth it for sure.
All right, so that's Kylie Blues. And
Kylie Blues by Gon B. Yeah.
Yeah, Gon B, Kaili. And it's available on the Criterion Channel, right?
It is. Yeah, and he just did a 3D movie with an incredibly long 3D long take as well, which I missed in theaters, but maybe we'll be able to see it somehow. Yeah.
All right, Jeff Canada, what have you been watching this week?
I finally finished season 2 of Fleabag. I know I talked a little bit about season 1 when I watched that, but these are very short seasons, 6 episodes, half an hour each, but it takes me a while to get through things. But I know we are in the golden age of television, but I still don't say this statement very often. Fleabag season 2 is a work of genius. Mm-hmm. I believe that. I really think it is a work of genius. It is so perfect, so on every level, how it's shot, how it's acted, how it's written. It is how it's cast. It is a work of genius. It is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a relationship that like the one depicted in season 2 ever in fiction. It is so different and unique and carves out its own really specific, beautiful version of a love story, a very complicated one with characters that are so perfectly, uniquely drawn. I've never seen a character like the one that's introduced in season 2. I mean, the show was excellent in season 1. Excellent. I think season 2 takes it into masterpiece territory, and I'm blown away by how good it is. It sounds like we're not getting a season 3, and that makes me sad, but boy, does it end
done.
perfectly.
It's done.
Yeah,
and
it's
it ends
perfect.
perfectly. I think that's it. Like, that's the great thing about some British TV shows, right? Is like they
know when to
end.
stop. Yeah.
It's really tight, like a really small episode count. I think we can say a little more, Jeff. Like, it's not a spoiler to say, like, this season introduces a priest into the storyline, played by Andrew Scott, who's also awesome in that second episode of Black Mirror this season.
He's phenomenal.
He's so good. He's so good in everything.
Talent.
He was great in Sherlock. I'm surprised we don't see him in more things, but this is kind of his year. But yeah, it builds so much in season 1. I was worried that it wouldn't be able to live up to season 1, and it's somehow more perfect than season 1. Like, it plays with the construct of the show, the way she kind of talks aside to the audience. It even plays with that, and I found that super fascinating. So
it's incredible.
Go watch it.
Season 1 establishes a tone, and season 2 completely changes it. It is a completely different kind of show in season 2, but not inauthentic to what has been established from season 1. It actually has progression in who these people are and expands the scope of who they're talking about, is much more interested in the lives of sort of secondary characters from the first season as well. And it effortlessly shows how a show can be new and the same at the same time, and introduce things, talk about things in ways no one has ever done. I mean, this is great art. This is examining a human behavior and human relationships in a completely fresh way that I've never seen art look at like this. I've never seen a character like this priest ever in a novel, in a film, in anything. It is fascinating, and you fall in love along with these characters, and it is an extraordinary work, and one I think everybody should watch. It's a very adult show, but it is exquisite.
Lindsay Romain, I think you've also seen Fleabag season 2 as well, right? What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I share the exact same sentiments. I'm obsessed with it. I was also very nervous because of the first season, so perfect to me and so dear to me that I was, always have that hesitation, even though I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge and think that she can do no wrong basically at this point. But yeah, I watched all. I don't really like to binge like anything, but I couldn't not with this show. I watched it all in one sitting and just cried through the whole thing. My favorite thing about it is that it really shows how grief stays with you in all of these different kind of strange ways that you might not even think. And like both, I don't know, it's not to get too much into like the plot, but it's really just showing how you learn to love and move on with your life from tough situations, grieving all sorts of different things, not just one thing. Yeah, it's really powerful. I even just thinking about that the final episode literally brings me to tears. Like I can't.
But also the show is very funny, right? It's very funny.
Yeah. That's why it's so, it's just every emotion in it. And sad and happy. It's hard not to talk about specifics, but it's great.
All right. Well, that's Fleabag season 2. Everyone on the podcast loves it. You should check it out. It's on Prime Video right now. Before we get to our review of Men in Black International, we got to thank all the people that donated to the show. Just one donor this week. This donation comes in from John, who writes in, shout out to my best friend and fellow /Filmcast listener, Nate Volker. We met in high school and have shared the highs and lows of friendship over 10 plus years, falling in love in parallel and recently both becoming fathers. We are currently doing our own Kubrick retrospective over the summer, starting from Flying Padre, and there's no one else I'd rather do it with. Happy Father's Day to Nate, Jeff, and Devindra, and maybe someday Dave will understand Interstellar. So that message comes in from John. Thanks so much for your donation, John. If you want to support what we do here on the /Filmcast, go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/filmcast to make a one-time donation. Never donate if it in any way causes you hardship of any kind. But if you want to spare some cash and help us defray the cost of seeing films, you can always go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/filmcast. Let's move on to our review of Men in Black International. Well, folks, this week I watched a movie directed by F. Gary Gray that was the latest entry in a series spawned by director Barry Sonnenfeld. Despite having a great premise and a solid cast, the F. Gary Gray film ended up being pretty poorly reviewed compared to its predecessor and made significantly less money. But enough about Be Cool, everyone.
Wow.
Zing.
That's a deep cut.
Boom goes
dynamite.
the dynamite. Let's talk about Men in Black International. I mean, it is kind of hilarious that F. Gary Gray followed up 2 Barry Sonnenfeld films with like weaker entries. Don't you guys think?
Yeah.
Anyway, so Men in Black International. Let's read the plot summary here. The Men in Black have expanded to cover the globe, but so have the villains of the universe. To keep everyone safe, decorated Agent H and determined rookie M join forces, an unlikely pairing that just might work. When aliens that can take the form of any human arrive on Earth, H and M embark on a globe-trotting adventure to save the agency and ultimately the world from their mischievous plans. So, Lindsay Romaine, one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast is that like you are a big Tessa Thompson fan, right? And this is Tessa Thompson's starring role. She's one of the protagonists. And so before we get into like what you think of the movie, kind of curious like what your thoughts are on the original Men in Black, and then we'd love to hear your overall thoughts on Men in Black International.
Yeah, so going off of what we were talking before, Men in Black is definitely like a movie I grew up with. It's one of the few movies I really, really watched and rewatched as a kid. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of affection for that first one. It scared me, and it was funny, and it was everything. I wasn't as in love with the second two. Don't have as many strong memories, but I always had kind of an affection for this franchise. And so, I was really looking forward to this one because of my love for Tessa Thompson, because of my extreme love for Chris Hemsworth also, and their, camaraderie, their chemistry going off of Marvel. I think that it had everything going for it.
There's no way it could have failed.
Yeah, there's no way.
But yeah,
you really have to be some sort of idiot to screw up this formula.
Just
I don't know what's going on.
Just a quick note though about Men in Black 1. I mean, that movie still holds up.
It's perfect.
I cannot. Yeah. Devindra, you got so upset last week about the revisionist history about like the first couple X-Men movies. Yeah. Like the idea that Men in Black 1 is not excellent is really upsetting to me. I mean, it is outstanding. It's a perfect summer movie, and it's under 100 minutes long, which is
I think it's like 85 minutes long. It's tight.
It is extremely rare to find a movie of that length that's that
1
good.
1 hour 38 minutes, Men in Black.
Yeah.
1 hour 38 minutes. Wait, the first one was?
It. I never loved it, but
the first one was? You're saying 138 minutes?
No, 1 hour 38.
Oh, 1 hour 30 minutes. Okay, I was like 130 minutes. No, that doesn't right. Yeah. So you never loved it though, Jeff.
No, but I don't think it's bad. It was just never one of those ones that I fell in love with.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, Lindsay, really psyched going into this new one. Maybe the Sony has like rebooted the franchise for a new generation. Thoughts on Men in Black International?
Yeah, I'm going to say it didn't really live up to those expectations that I had, which weren't even really that high. It wasn't some like astronomical, like me expecting it to be this wonderful thing. I think I maybe even tweeted this. My hopes for it were something along the lines of like Man from U.N.C.L.E., like that came out a few years ago, this sort of breezy, fun summer movie that I can just sit back and it doesn't have to have super high stakes, just something where it's like the chemistry of the leads and, I have fun like eating popcorn and watching it.
Yeah, and just having like attractive people in like nice looking clothes, bantering and riffing off each other. Like, alien stuff. And that's enough. That's all you need to have a good movie, right?
Yeah, that's really all you need. But apparently you definitely need more than that because Men in Black International, I was not a fan. I found it very just dull, like especially considering all of these like perfect ingredients, and like not even just Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth, but you also have Liam Neeson and you have Emma Thompson, Kumail. Like you have like all of these people who you're so like you have all the ingredients basically to make exactly the movie I was describing, and instead it really thudded along for me. I didn't connect to any of the characters. I didn't feel like we even spent much time with any of the characters enough to even know who they were. I think it really just kind of coasts on the Men in Black name and those actors and doesn't really do much work in between. So I was really let down by it. Yeah.
How about you, Devindra?
Yeah, so I love the first Men in Black. I do think it is one of those special 90s things. That movie has a perfect combination of like star power and a great sense of discovery too. And I was into like paranormal stuff and alien stuff back then too. So seeing like a movie around the Men in Black is like this weird sort of police force against alien invasions and stuff, like I think was very cool. That movie just has a certain amount of magic to it. A lot of that is down to Will Smith. A lot of that's down to like a great script, great direction. 2 is bad. 3 we reviewed, and I really enjoy it. Like, I think there's a lot. It's certainly not as good as the first one, but I think it has a lot going for it with the whole time travel element and everything. This movie, I don't know what went wrong. Like, it's astounding. Like, because they have such a fantastic cast. It's Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson like together again. I was annoyed that they would just kind of be rehashing the Thor Ragnarok dynamic a little, but this is different. I'm fine with it. But there is no sense of discovery in this movie. It does feel like everything's on autopilot. At one point through this movie, I was practically falling asleep, and that shouldn't happen for a movie that's all about like the wonder of, humans interacting with the species from outer space. Like, nothing about it works. I think it's just a weak script. And there's just really nothing moving this movie along. Whereas the first one is all propulsion. Like, you're always moving. Something's always happening. Something new is always happening. It is hard to recreate that sense of discovery. And I think this movie does add a couple new things. That transcontinental subway thing is kind of cool. I like the one battle scene where they just start disassembling the car, and every bit of the car is a weapon. Like, there are cool ideas, but it doesn't really amount to anything. And certainly there aren't any relationships too. Like, I think of little things from that first movie. That movie, that day that Will Smith's character spends just thinking about the fact that he's leaving his entire life behind. And you sit with that, and, as a teenager, I thought about the potential of that. Like, it's a movie that made you think at certain times.
Yeah.
This movie does not. It's like, this character is like, okay, I'm a fangirl. I'm ready to do this. I have no life. Let's just go. I don't need any second thoughts about any of this. And it's that sort of thing. Like, it's very flippant with this franchise. And I don't know. I find it disrespectful. I am not here for it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it takes any time with any scenes at all. Like, it just literally, like, you're just going through the plot at rapid speed, and there's no... Yeah, you don't sit with anything at all, which really makes it hard to get invested.
Despite the film being quite long, in my opinion.
Yeah, too long.
I mean, there's a moment in the movie when I'm like, well, I guess that all wrapped up nicely. And then it's like, oh, wait, there's actually a whole other act of this movie that I wasn't aware of. But so... I have some more background information. The Hollywood Reporter has a story today where basically anytime a movie does badly, there's a lot of people who speak to the Hollywood Reporter or Deadline and try to like finger point and like blame it on other people. And that certainly happened today at the Hollywood Reporter. But before I get to any of that, Jeff Canada, what do you think of Men in Black International?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts about Men in Black International are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Excellent.
Lindsay, if you're not aware.
Oh, I'm aware.
Okay.
I'm very excited right now.
Some reboots just need to be banned. They don't seem to be helping their brand. For example, there's these new MIBs. Men in Black, more like Men in Bland.
Oh,
nice.
Nice. Pretty good, Jeff. Pretty
you.
good. Very nicely done.
Yes, I second everything that has been said so far. This is a movie that tells you everything about the characters.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, the Chris Hemsworth character is different than he used to be.
Yeah.
Except we saw him how he used to be, and he was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's an entire scene of how he used to be, and he's the same flippant, roguish, daring do type of fella that everybody comments on him being so different. He's so different. Liam Neeson, he was like a father to me, except all we know is that we just say it over and over. He's like we had this relationship like a father to me. It is a movie where everything you know about the characters is because someone tells you it
Yeah.
over and over rather than actually experiencing it. there is no chemistry between these characters that should have tons of chemistry because we've watched these actors have chemistry before. But the movie is so uninterested in giving you anything. It's really bizarre. You actually have a really clever idea here. You have Men in Black, a organization that has been established as recruiting people and plucking them out of their lives and throwing them into this crazy thing. And this movie goes, what if there was somebody that has wanted this their entire life? That's a really fascinating concept, except it is completely unexplored, completely just a throwaway thing that we are told about this character, but we don't really invest in the way we did with Will Smith and and go along that journey with him. The movie is so much more interested in giving us this wacky plot, this crazy plot that you see coming from a mile away. There's a quote unquote twist and that is so rote and so obvious that I can't believe that they spend so much time setting it up, because it's the least interesting thing in this movie. There's very little clever. There's very little funny. I saw this movie in a packed theater, and maybe there were a couple of chuckles, all from Kumail Nanjiani's lines late in the movie. But there are, the movie is just tragically unfunny and really very unclever. Like one of the things that's so great about MIB movies in the past is like these wacky ideas, these cartoonish ideas of how aliens may have stayed in. There's a couple of things where they take big swings, but for the most part, they're so concerned with turning Men in Black into James Bond and getting all over the world to justify the international name that half the time the last suit you'll ever need, our characters aren't even in, that they don't even wear the Men in Black suits for large sections of this movie. It is really just, as you said, dull. It is dull. I'm shocked at how just there's no spark of life to this movie, and it's because of the things you guys have said, which is they don't take any time. They rush to a story that is so uninteresting, but they spend so much time laboriously setting up this plot twist that no one cares about because it's like based on backstory that we don't even care or see, or it's so weird.
Yeah, so
not a good movie.
Walter Chaw's in the chat room, but I have to say I quite appreciated his review of this film at filmfreakcentral.net, where to respond to something you said, Jeff. By the way, he says here, quote, "Turns out there's a mole in the London office of the Men in Black, and if you don't know who and why that is, then this is the very first movie you've ever seen. I'm glad you're seeing a movie. They're great. I do wish you started with a good one, and hope you'll give the whole experiment another try." End quote.
Yeah, very good line.
And I have to say also that Walter Chaw's review was so scathing that my wife was going to go see this movie with me, and she read this review and then said, "I'm not going to see this movie anymore."
Yeah, you have better things to do with your life.
Because in the movie, in the review, Walter says the picture should come with a cyanide capsule and a hollow tooth, which I think is pretty rough, but not 100% unfair. So
let me tell you though, I don't fall asleep during movies very often, but I was definitely on the borderline of falling asleep several times throughout this movie, and I don't know why.
I would say that the main issue for me in this movie. So Jeff, you really articulated well, that it's a lot of telling and not showing, tons of telling and not showing in this movie. But I think where it comes down to it for me is the tone is a little bit off. Specifically, I think Men in Black 1 was this really amazing combination of Will Smith turning in one of the most charming performances he's ever done. He is just super charming, super charismatic in that role.
And a great audience surrogate, too, because he is discovering all this. Yeah.
And then you have Tommy Lee Jones completely deadpan for pretty much the entire film, and everyone plays it straight.
And I think the story there is that he hated the movie. Tommy Lee Jones hated the movie until like maybe later on during filming. So him being deadpan is him hating everything, and it works. It works.
It completely works, and everyone plays it straight. Like everyone takes this entire it's an extremely serious situation that has like occasional moments of levity as injected by Will Smith. And that is like the tone of the first Men in Black that I felt worked really well. That is not the tone of this movie. Like the two characters, H and M, right? The ones played by Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth are like hamming it up the whole time. You know, they're like, there's this moment at the beginning when like Tessa Thompson picks up a gun and she's like, "Check, please," and it's like, okay, and you know, like they're both doing it. They're both doing it. Like both Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson are like joking, and like even like some of their coworkers get in on the action too. And it's just like the first film relied on this extremely delicate balance between the serious and the silly, you know, the awe-inspiring and the goofy, and this movie has no sense of that balance whatsoever. And like you said, Devindra,
well, and also it works because Will Smith is an audience surrogate, and we're seeing the goofy through his eyes, and he's reacting like, well, that's weird, you know, and there's no character that does that in this movie, even though you have Tessa Thompson set up to do that.
Because she's the super nerd who's like researched everything. So it's nothing phases her, really. It's a shame.
And I mean, I agree with you. And this the chemistry, like you guys said, doesn't quite work for me in this movie. I don't know, like, what is it missing that Thor Ragnarok had? You know, but
good writing. Good writing.
Well, speaking of writing, so this Hollywood Reporter story came out today, and it has some pretty interesting details about what the movie was originally supposed to be. Apparently, the original script was good, but according to the story, quote, early drafts of the script were described as being more edgy and timely, tying the story to the current debate surrounding immigration. At one point, a music group a la the Beatles were to be the bad guys, with 4 people merging into one villain. Multiple sources describe Parks, who is the producer, who had final cut on the film, and who had written movies such as the 1983 classic War Games and the 1992 Robert Redford thriller Sneakers, as having a heavy hand in overseeing rewrites not only during the pre-production process but also during production as well. And also, apparently, Thompson and Hemsworth hired their own dialogue writers during the course of the movie, which all of it sounds like it made for, you know, pretty messy situation. It does feel like a massive missed opportunity in today's day and age to make a movie called Men in Black International that is in the Men in Black universe and not have anything to say about immigration. Even the original Men in Black was a really kind of hopeful story about how Earth could be a refuge for people, for aliens all around the world, and for people just trying to like get on with their life, like live life.
It was such a like a New York story too.
Yeah.
Like speaking of immigration, like it was the dream of the U.S. It was the dream of New York and everything. Well, I don't know what they could have said. So much. They could have said so much about, you know, united, the EU kind of fracturing. They could have said so much about the world as it is today. And at the end of the day, like, it says nothing. And another thing we haven't really mentioned, I think most of the creature effects are terrible. Most of the creatures look bad. It's just bad CG. Whereas the first movie, sure, it had CG, but there's so much great practical stuff. I think of like that moment when the baby alien pops out in the middle of the highway. And it's so perfect. And then it's it's CG.
And it
also
spits
married
up the one that spits
a
up
lot
on
of
Will
goof.
Smith, right?
Yeah. It's interaction. Like this movie has none of that.
Yeah.
Rick
Baker, by the way, did the effects on Men in Black 1.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Legend. Anyway, sorry, Jeff?
I was just asking if we're doing spoilers for this or not.
No, let's
Sure,
do
why not?
spoilers. Let's get the spoilers for Men in Black International starting right now. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, there's a few scenes that I want to point out. One of which is there's a moment early on. Well, it takes forever, by the way, for Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson to meet. But I don't know why, because there's nothing interesting happening in any of that time that seems essential. But when they finally do meet, well, this is actually much farther after that, after the big street fight with, admittedly, like Devindra said, a cool idea of pulling stuff out of that car. That was kind of rad. But Tessa Thompson gets this thing and the MacGuffin, and there's a scene where she where Chris Hemsworth evidently lifts it from her somehow, even though he has no idea she has it.
Yes.
None of that. Nothing is explained about how he got it from her, why he knows she has it. Then the movie literally has no interest in. He just magically got it from her somehow and knows what it is, and it is the weirdest moment until another weird moment where there's like this smash cut after the big motorcycle chase, which is so dumb, where they land in the desert, and then we smash cut to later on, and now they're not talking to each other for some reason. They have to talk through Kumail Nanjiani's character, which is a cute little bit of dialogue play. But
that's when I fell asleep. I thought I had missed part of the movie, or at least I was like nodding off. I was like, wait a minute, did I miss a whole scene?
Yeah,
what's
it
going
seems
on
like
here?
it. It makes no sense why they all of a sudden have this contentious tete-a-tete, not speaking to one another and working on this motorcycle together.
That motorcycle thing, aren't you supposed to not have people see all this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point of this series.
Yeah, well, she did,
No, at the end, but there's a whole part where he's just like floating around that motorcycle, and like hundreds of people saw him.
She also blasts. She literally holds it up and blasts like 2 people. Like there's a huge crowd, and it doesn't even show her like trying to get as many people as she can. She doesn't even try. She just does it twice, and they like take off. I was like, okay.
I do think the tone of this movie is really weird. Where you have Kumail Nanjiani's character, like Pawnee, he got most of the laughs in my theater, right? Like, no one was laughing at any of the banter between Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth, but they were laughing at Kumail Nanjiani. But he's kind of this like cute, adorable little creature.
He's a creation to sell this movie to kids.
Yeah, he's a creation to sell this movie to kids. He's supposed to sell this movie to kids. A movie in which a dude gets his face graphically melted off in the first act of the film.
He becomes a puddle of skin.
And the camera dwells on it. The camera like lingers on this guy melting into a puddle of like goo.
And those guys evidently are not the bad guys. Oh, that's another thing, by the way. Talking about the show not tell, or the tell not show of this movie, we are told the Hive is bad. The Hive, bad. We know nothing about them. Zero. The Hive, big bad. Can't let the Hive do things. And evidently they compromised Liam Neeson somehow, but we know absolutely nothing about them. There's a different villain that ends up not being the villain, and at the end we have to stop the Hive.
Scene that is supposed to be the big battle with the Hive, and like it cuts away in such an awkward way. I guess it's like, oh, we're gonna go save the day again, yada yada yada. I don't know. Such a good opportunity to like introduce a little bit of terror into what those things are.
Are we supposed to think the reason that they cut away from that so quickly is because somehow the Hive swapped out Liam Neeson, or did something to his brain to compromise him that we can't see because that ruins the big reveal at the end? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that I was going to go back to that tone thing. I honestly feel like this movie at times like really wants to just be a straight up kids movie. Like even the aliens, the new aliens, there's like that kind of neon fuzzy one in the beginning. It like literally looks like one of those Thai Beanie Babies with like the big eyes and like the neon colors that you see in like airports. I was like, it looks like it's trying to appeal to small children. And there were times during the movie where I was like, I probably would love this movie if I was like 7 years old. And yeah, don't know plot twists and stuff. But then yeah, there's like this weird undercurrent of like, I don't know, sexual tension, and then like you were saying, like some graphic stuff here and there, and it's just like
alien sex. There's
like just a few like harsh swear words at different times, and it's like I just don't know what it's trying to do.
What is happening?
A movie for kids where Chris Hemsworth fucks a tentacled alien. In one of the first scenes of the movie. So
they won't get
that. They won't get that. I will say,
and then later tries to pimp out Tessa Thompson for the same purpose.
Yeah.
Another thing that kind of annoyed me, by the way, this is called Men in Black International, and the only international we get, like we hop to a couple other cities and stuff, but we don't get a sense of like how Men in Black works differently elsewhere. Like the London office is just it's a train ride away, and it's exactly the same as the New York office. There's like nothing different or interesting about it other than Liam Neeson is in charge.
Well, also Liam Neeson is called High Tea, not just tea. You see, and a delicious pun.
I see.
Are there multiple people named H and M? Because I thought the whole thing was there could only ever be 26 agents.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how that all worked out exactly. But I mean, they have a high tea. Maybe everyone is high in Britain. But yeah, I agree. It really didn't take too much advantage of the international locales. Like, ideally, there'd be like a whole, like the set looks almost identical to the in feel to the one in the U.S. Right?
Like the Kingsman. The Kingsman sequel really did that brilliantly of making the different Kingsmen like a caricature of their geographical location.
Even like John Wick. Like after watching John Wick and seeing this, like where the hotels are so different and stuff, it's just like you couldn't have put like any extra effort into that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Here's what I'm going to say, though. Here's what I'm going to say I like about the movie, okay? After 20 minutes of saying how terrible it is, here's what I'm going to say I like about the movie. I actually think the effect of the two dudes, like the two bad dudes, like they like look like Nebula or whatever. They look like they're like celestial in some way. I thought that was a pretty cool visual effect.
Cool.
So I got to give props to that. And always great to see Rebecca Ferguson in a movie, So can't complain about that.
Oh yeah, that was her. I totally didn't even catch that. Man. I will say one thing. I'm still waiting for the series to like capitalize on that idea introduced at the end of the first movie, where the entire universe is contained in the marble of this alien. Like, come on, give us something.
It's a profound thought. Certainly more profound than anything we see in this film. So yeah, any closing thoughts or any other moments from this movie that we wanted to bring up? I think we've hit on most of the problems.
My only other kind of resting thing that we haven't really talked about is like when we were talking about, giving this a fresh perspective on this world, in addition to like everything else, there's no real world commentary or anything interesting like that. But you also have your first like woman Men in Black character, and it does zero with that at all. Like besides making a few like, oh, we should be called the Women in Black or whatever jokes, like there's nothing to even like differentiate Tessa Thompson's character. Not that it needs to be some like big like I'm a woman thing, but you can tell when there's been like no work put into.
At the end of the first movie, that was one thing. Like, wasn't the doctor became an agent too? So there was that, and we never.
Wasn't Trinity a Men in Black, or who am I thinking of?
I think you're thinking of Linda Fiorentino from the first Men in Black.
Yeah.
Oh, Linda, Fiorentino. Yeah.
But it's the first time we've had like a lead, really. We're seeing the world through the eyes of a woman too, and like you would think that there would be some difference there, and it's like no.
I will say I feel a bit bad. Also, I'm a huge Tessa Thompson fan. Been following her since like the Veronica Mars days, and even since that show, like she always had this spark of charisma and something really interesting going on. And she's had a pretty good run, recently between all the Avengers stuff and the Creed franchise and everything, and Westworld too, I guess.
Yeah,
is going to be happening. This is just like one weird thing. Like I wish this being a starring vehicle for her, I wish it was better, basically, because I want to see her not just as a supporting character.
I have a question for you, Lindsay. We had Aisha Harris on this podcast a few weeks ago talking about like Aladdin and how there's like these new woke songs in the new Aladdin now, right? And I think like in Dark Phoenix last week, which is another movie you saw, and also this movie, Men in Black International, like in two successive movies in a row, one in which there's an organization called X-Men and one in which is an organization called Men in Black, there's been a comment on how those names are sexist in the actual like text of the film. I'm just curious, like, what your reaction was to that. Like, were you like, you're right, it should have women in the title, or like were you like, this is terrible pandering and awful?
It's terrible pandering. Honestly, I think even Endgame, which is a movie that I really loved, does that too a bit too, where it's doing kind of also what you were saying with the showing and not, or the telling and not showing, which is like you just kind of like you shoehorn these little like phrases and whatever lines in there, and it doesn't do anything to like actually give these women interesting things to do besides just saying that they should be acknowledged. And I don't know how exactly you fix that. Hire more women is really just kind of the easy answer. But Yeah,
I think it's also like tough because the movies themselves are like not great, right? Like
right.
if the
right.
movies were like really good and like the characters were awesome, then it might feel differently. But instead, you just have these like kind of weak films with these woke moments, perfunctorily inserted into them, right?
Right, it sticks out a lot more when it's something like that. When it's like, okay, like you're doing zero effort, but you're just gonna toss in this line that just shows all the like not effort that you're doing. It just makes it way more
It
obvious.
shows all the not effort that you're
Oh,
making.
yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, it sounds like it was a failure on pretty much every level.
Guys and girls, rough summer. Rough summer.
Yeah.
It's been
rough.
3 successive weeks of rough sequels.
I feel like summers are always rough, but this feels particularly rough.
It's been
I don't
quite
know.
a slog. It's been quite a slog. But Jeff, I'm hoping that next week's Toy Story 4 review is going to break the cycle.
Got to bounce back.
Yeah. Save the
us,
summer.
help us, Disney Studios. You're our only hope.
You're our only hope. You're our only hope. All right. Well, those are our thoughts on Men in Black International, which is playing right now in theaters. You can find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from AdamWarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. This episode was produced and edited by Beatty Zhang. And until next week, Lindsay Romaine, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
You can find me at nerdist.com.
And how about you, Jeff Kanata?
You can find me on Twitter at Jeff Kanata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. I do a video game podcast called DLC. We just had a bunch of episodes about E3, which was a big thing. So check that out at 5by5.tv/DLC. And I hope you check out my newest adventure, which is called The Dungeon Run. It's a live play Dungeons and Dragons show where I'm the dungeon master, and I'm really, really proud of it. We're making up, I think, a really cool story. People have been responding really positively to it. I hope you check it out. You can find it on YouTube if you search for The Dungeon Run, or as an audio podcast, wherever you get audio podcasts, or you can tune in live and actually impact the story in real time on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time at caffeine.tv/The Dungeon Run.
How about you, Devindra Hardwar?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Devindra. I write about tech at Engadget.com. And I'm also doing a tech podcast at nomoretech.net. That's no with a K.
I made a cool video last week about Netflix's Always Be My Maybe and all the kind of Asian American Easter eggs that my wife and I found in that film. You can find that at youtube.com/Dave Chensky. That's Dave Chen, SKY. Next week, Toy Story 4 is the film we're going to review. Break the summer curse, guys. Break the summer curse with Toy Story 4. One quick thing before we wrap up, actually, is just the summer movie wager. Got to give a little update on that, which is that I am destroying everyone with 42 points so far. But here's the problem. I think in pretty much every single case in the history of the summer movie wager, whoever is winning at this stage never wins at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
the numbers got to get shuffled.
Because
yeah.
everything changes so much.
I think last year I was way ahead at about this time.
You were,
and
you were
how that
never
worked
leading,
out.
Jeff. Don't
I think
lie.
it was me. I'm pretty sure I remember that being me.
I don't think so. I will say that I think so far this summer has been really unexpected. I don't think any of us expected Godzilla to do so poorly. I don't think even Secret Life of Pets is like way down from what it originally was supposed to be. Detective Pikachu didn't do that well either. Meanwhile, John Wick 3 freaking running away with it. And Devindra looking like he is sitting pretty because he is the person that put Aladdin so high. He put Aladdin at number 4. Aladdin has made $264 million already.
All right.
So
yeah, it's gonna be higher than I put it for sure.
Yeah, so pretty unexpected. I am crushing right now, but if I had to bet money, I'd think Devindra is probably going to vanquish me this year, which is going to be pretty upsetting. Lindsay, anything surprise you about the summer's box office so far? Anything that you were really happy about or sad about?
Not box office wise so much. I mean, yeah, I think Aladdin definitely surprised me too, just because I thought the trailers were pretty dismal, so I didn't think it was gonna like actually take off. So I think it would be that one. But I'm really curious. I'm really anxious to see what Lion King does. That's the one that I feel like is the big, like, if Aladdin did so well, it seems like that could.
I
just,
think
like,
Lion
crush.
King could do double Aladdin's business.
Easily.
So,
yeah,
like it's gonna be crazy. And I think it'll be equally good in terms of how creatively meaningful that movie is. So putting that out there too. Okay, well, thanks for tuning into the Slash Filmcast. We'll see you next week.